The Real Uncle Sam. In 1780, a boy named Samuel Wilson was born in Massachusetts. He grew up on a farm and learned to work hard. When he was older, he moved to Troy, New York. There, he opened a meat business with his brother. They packed beef into wooden barrels for stores and the army. Samuel was kind and honest, and everyone called him Uncle Sam. People liked him because he always kept his promises. In 1812, the United States went to war with Britain. The army needed food, so Samuel got a job to supply meat. Every barrel he sent was marked with U.S. for United States. Soldiers saw the letters and joked, U.S.? That means Uncle Sam. The joke spread fast from camp to camp. Soon, many soldiers said the government was like Uncle Sam, watching over them. Years passed, and the name stayed in people's minds. In newspapers and cartoons, artists began to draw a man called Uncle Sam. He wore a top hat with stars, a blue coat, and red and white stripes. He looked serious but fair, like a wise old uncle. During the Civil War, his image reminded people to be loyal to the country. In World War I, the government wanted to encourage young men to join the army. A famous artist named James Flagg made a poster of Uncle Sam. He pointed his finger and said, I want you for U.S. Army. Millions of copies were printed and put on walls across America. The face in the poster looked like Flagg himself, not Samuel Wilson. But the name and spirit came from the real meat packer from New York. After the war, people began to ask, where did Uncle Sam come from? Historians looked into old records and found Samuel Wilson's story. In 1961, the U.S. Congress passed a law. It said officially, Uncle Sam was based on Samuel Wilson. The man who packed meat for soldiers became a national symbol. Samuel never knew he would become famous. He just did his job with honesty and care. Today, children learn about him in school. A monument in Troy honors the real Uncle Sam. His life shows how a simple, hard-working man can represent a whole nation.
The Great Depression. It was the year 1929 in a small town in America. John, a factory worker, went to work every morning. His wife, Mary, took care of their 3 children. They lived in a small house with a red door. One day, John came home early. The factory had closed because of the stock market crash. He had no job and no money coming in. Mary tried not to cry, but she was very worried. They had only a little food in the kitchen. Their oldest son, Tom, was 12 years old. Tom wanted to help his family. He started selling newspapers after school. Sometimes he earned a few coins, but not enough. The bank took their house because they couldn't pay. The family moved into a small tent in a shanty town. People called these towns Hoovervilles. Winter came, and it was very cold. They burned old wood and paper to stay warm. Mary made clothes from old sacks. Tom gave half his sandwich to his little sister. One day, Mary heard about a government soup kitchen. She walked 2 miles to get a warm meal for the family. John joined a line for jobs every morning. There were hundreds of men, but only a few jobs. A kind neighbor gave them a broken radio. At night, they listened to music and news together. President Roosevelt gave a speech on the radio. He promised hope and new programs to help people. Slowly, things began to change. John got a job planting trees in a national park. It wasn't much pay, but it was something. The children went back to school with donated books. They still had little, but they had each other. Years later, Tom said those hard times taught him strength. The Great Depression was long and painful, but families survived.
The Gold Rush Dream. It was 1849 in California, and gold had been found. Many people heard the news and wanted to get rich. Tom, a young farmer from Ohio, decided to go. He said goodbye to his wife Anna and their baby. He packed a bag with clothes, a pan, and food. The journey to California was long and dangerous. He traveled by wagon, then by boat, and finally on foot. Some people got sick on the way. Others gave up. When Tom arrived, he saw hundreds of tents in the hills. Men were digging everywhere, hoping to find gold. Tom found a small spot near a river to dig. Every day, he worked from sunrise to sunset. He washed dirt in his pan, looking for shiny pieces. At first, he found only a few tiny flakes. He started to feel tired and sad. One night, he wrote a letter to Anna. "I miss you," he wrote. "I don't know if I should stay." But the next morning, he decided to try one more week. Then, one rainy morning, he saw something bright in the pan. It was a big gold nugget, bigger than any he had seen. He jumped and shouted with joy. Other men came to look and clapped for him. That night, he dreamed of going home.
He sold the nugget for a lot of money. With the money, he bought tools and helped other miners. He also sent some money to Anna by mail. Anna wrote back, "Come home, we are waiting." Tom knew it was time to leave the goldfields. He traveled back slowly, this time with hope. When he arrived home, Anna and the baby ran to hug him. He didn't become a millionaire, but he had enough. They fixed their farm and lived a quiet, happy life. Tom sometimes told the story of the gold nugget. He said the real treasure was being with his family.
The Price of Liberty. In 1773, a family lived in Boston, Massachusetts. The father, Thomas, was a candle maker. His wife, Eleanor, taught their children at home. They had 3 kids, James, 15, Mary, 12, and little Ben, 6. Life was hard, but they were happy and free. But the British king taxed everything: tea, paper, even candles. Thomas said, "We had no say in these laws. That is not fair." One night, James heard men whispering in a tavern. They planned to throw British tea into the harbor. He told his father, who said, "Stay out of trouble." But James joined them anyway and helped dump 300 chests of tea. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. The British were angry and sent more soldiers to Boston. Troops marched through the streets and took over homes. One soldier stayed in Thomas's house for weeks. The family had to share their food and space. Tensions grew between colonists and soldiers. One cold night in March 1770, a crowd gathered. They threw snowballs and stones at British guards. Soldiers panicked and fired their guns. 5 colonists were killed, including a man named Crispus Attucks. This became known as the Boston Massacre. James saw it happen and ran home in tears. Thomas decided it was time to fight for justice. He joined the patriot group called the Sons of Liberty. Eleanor was afraid, but supported him. She started making cloth at home so they wouldn't need British goods. Mary helped by collecting herbs for medicine. In April 1775, British troops marched to Concord to seize weapons. Paul Revere rode through the night shouting, "The British are coming." James rode with him for part of the way. At Lexington, the first shots of the war were fired. The American Revolution had begun. Thomas joined the Continental Army. He said goodbye to his family with tears in his eyes. Eleanor managed the farm and kept everyone safe. She also passed secret messages to other patriots. Mary pretended to play near British camps and listened to their plans. In 1776, the colonies declared independence. Thomas read the Declaration of Independence aloud under a tree. James said, "Now we are fighting for a new country." But the war was long and difficult.
Winters were cold, and food was scarce. In 1777, Thomas was wounded in the Battle of Brandywine. He was taken to a field hospital and nearly died. Eleanor traveled for days to care for him. She nursed him back to health with love and herbs. By 1781, the tide of war turned. With help from France, American forces trapped the British at Yorktown. General Cornwallis surrendered and the fighting ended. 4 years later, the Treaty of Paris made America free. The family returned to their home, which had been damaged. They rebuilt it together, board by board. Thomas said, "Freedom is not free. It costs sacrifice." James joined the new government and helped write laws. Little Ben, now 14, said, "I want to serve my country too." Years later, people remembered the sacrifices of ordinary families. The American Revolution was not just about battles. It was about courage, hope, and the dream of liberty. And in one small home, a family helped build a nation.